After the divorce from Emma, she wasted no time in marrying another man. She assumed I was still pining over our years together, expecting me to disrupt her wedding in a dramatic, emotional outburst. However, to her astonishment, I never showed up. I had already departed for another country, embarking on a journey to become a Doctors Without Borders physician. It was only when Emma realized I had truly moved on that she discovered she couldn't bring herself to let me go. Chapter 1. Bright lights bathed the building of the Thompson Corporation. I was slowly escorted out, surrounded by a crowd. Hey, that car over there must be Chairwoman Thompson's, right? I looked up and met the smiling face of a woman. Her almond-shaped eyes sparkled like spring blossoms, and my heart skipped a beat. I smiled and walked over. She pulled me down and planted a kiss on the corner of my lips. The crowd immediately erupted into teasing and envious laughter. Wow, isn't CEO Clark supposed to be on a business trip? Can't believe she came to pick up Alex after work. They must be head over heels in love. Clearly, they've known each other since childhood, and their bond is unbreakable. Oh right, today is their 5th wedding anniversary, isn't it? Emma and I were the epitome of a power couple in our social circle. At the age of 11, my parents died in a car accident. Old Mr. Thompson, who had been comrades in arms with my grandfather, took me in. At 22, Emma inherited her family's pharmaceutical company, and I joined the company's research division. When I was 25, old Mr. Thompson passed away. On his deathbed, with a final decisive act, he arranged our marriage. We had been married for 5 years. Emma and I always appeared at public events hand in hand, our words and gestures exuding intimacy. Our perfect couple image left no room for malicious gossip or opportunists seeking to take advantage. On every anniversary and birthday, Emma would spare no expense, publicly declaring her affection in grand fashion. Everyone envied our seemingly idyllic romance. Emma took my arm and waved with a carefree smile. I'm taking my man home now. Inside the car, just as I was about to speak, she suddenly kissed my slightly parted lips. I froze. After a moment, when I could breathe again, I frowned and said, "It looks like someone's taking photos." Emma whispered something close to me, and I understood. I almost misinterpreted her actions again. A faint ache welled up in my chest, and my expression grew even more impassive. Unaware of my inner turmoil, Emma started the car in high spirits. Back at the Thompson residence, Emma, Alex, it's been 5 years, and you two are still so in love. When are you going to give me grandchildren? Sandra asked with a cheerful smile at the dinner table, and Martin nodded in agreement. Still a long way to go, Mom, Emma replied casually. We're both swamped with work. No rush. My expression remained unchanged, but my fingers tightened slightly around the fork. Everyone thought we were a loving, harmonious couple, including her parents, Sandra and Martin. But only Emma and I knew the truth. There was no romantic love between us. That night, I stayed at the Thompson home for the first time in ages. As I was washing my face, Emma was in the shower. Suddenly, the phone she left on the counter buzzed. I instinctively glanced at it and froze. The message read, "I miss you so much," and the contact name was Jake. My face turned ashen, and I stood rooted to the spot until the sound of the shower stopped and her warm, relaxed body leaned towards me. "Alex, will you dry my hair?" Emma handed me the hairdryer as naturally as ever and sat on the counter, waiting. I moved like a puppet, taking the hairdryer and going through the motions out of sheer muscle memory. After a long pause, I asked evenly, "Jake's back in the country?" The sound of the hairdryer cut off abruptly. In the mirror, I caught the flicker of hesitation in Emma's eyes. "Yes," she said heavily. My hand almost trembled, and I fought to keep it steady, even forcing a faint smile. "Did you two get back together?" In the silence, I seemed to hear Emma's hoarse, anguished voice from years ago. "He left me. He didn't want me, Alex. Why couldn't he love me?" A hint of longing crossed Emma's face, and for a moment, she resembled the same girl from the past, her eyes bright with hope as she offered all her love to the one she cared about. She shook her head. "No, we just started talking again." Of course, when Jake left, it wasn't just because of family and school. Sandra's pressure and disapproval had also played a part. Jake's father had been caught cheating, a scandal that made headlines. Ever since, Sandra had been critical of the entire Wilson family, accusing them of lacking morals and integrity. If they reconnected, who knew how Sandra would humiliate Jake. Emma had always been bold, never shying away from going after what she wanted. But when it came to the people she truly cared about, she became cautious and hesitant, second, guessing every move. I turned away silently. "Why are you always so calm?" Emma suddenly asked, looking at my back. "What would you do if your Lily came back?" I paused for a moment, but didn't answer. Emma shrugged, looking a bit disappointed, then softened her expression as she picked up her phone. I stood by the window, expressionless. My jet black eyes, often described as cold and emotionless, now shimmered. The rims of my eyes were visibly red. I silently mouthed the word idiot. In the end, you still couldn't let him go. Chapter 2. Oh, right. Emma suddenly remembered something and handed me a bag. Anniversary gift. Inside was the latest luxury brand watch, elegant and high-end, the kind of thing most men would presumably appreciate. I forced a polite smile and thanked her, even though I never wore watches like this. Emma had given me countless similar gifts, each one tasteful and impressive. She played the role of the perfect wife flawlessly, but I knew that when Emma was truly in love, it was a different story. "I don't even know what he likes anymore," I heard her murmur absently as she held her phone. My lashes fluttered slightly. Emma only ever got lost in thought like this for one person. Her warmth and generosity were ingrained in her upbringing and personality, making everyone around her feel comfortable. It was easy to mistake that warmth as being solely for me. As someone who had lost his family and grown up in another's home, I was drawn to her radiant presence. I fell in love with her naively and deeply. I thought the light that brightened my bleak youth was mine alone. I had loved her quietly for 10 years, but later I realized that light had shone on me without her even being aware. She would casually give me an expensive designer watch, but spend months agonizing over what gift to get Jake. She would take me to the finest restaurants, but clumsily and sincerely make a homemade bento box for Jake. She would throw me a lively birthday party, but secretly ride on Jake's motorcycle to the beach to watch the sunrise, just the two of them. When Emma truly liked someone, she became delicate, cautious, clumsy, and pure. When I realized all this, I felt pathetic. Strangely, though, I didn't feel resentment or jealousy because even I thought Jake was amazing. He deserved Emma's affection far more than I did. But why now? I was her legal husband, yet Jake, who had left her without a word for 4 years, only had to come back and beckon, and her heart was his again. That night, I was jolted awake by a sharp pain in my stomach. I reached for my phone, only to find that the person who should have been beside me was gone. To my surprise, I saw a social media post from Jake. In my youthful arrogance, I lost the one who cherished me most. Thankfully, she never left. The photo was blurry, showing only a partial silhouette of a woman. My stomach clenched, and cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I stared at the hand in the photo, where a ring was clearly visible. Somehow, I didn't feel I had the right to accuse Emma of betrayal. Our marriage had been a business arrangement from the start. Emma couldn't inherit her family's fortune without marrying me, and I, indifferent to love, didn't care whom I married. I knew Emma agreed to the marriage not only for the inheritance, but also as a way to defy Jake. I didn't mind being used. After all, none of us were without our flaws. At first, we maintained a polite, contract-based relationship, and our lives didn't change much. Then, one night after too much drinking, we crossed the line and ended up in bed together. The next day, we didn't talk about it, but from then on, we silently accepted the physical intimacy. I was gambling, foolishly hoping that over time, familiarity would turn into love. But in the end, I lost. Emma never fell in love with me. Those 5 years had been like a stolen dream, and I never expected it to shatter so quickly. A month after that night, I opened my email and found a message from a paparazzi. There was a price tag attached to photos of Emma and Jake, arm in arm, entering a hotel. I stared at their backs for 10 long minutes. Then, eerily calm, I transferred the money to buy the rights to the photos. Jake in the picture was tall and elegant, even more handsome than before. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My hair was a mess from long hours in the lab. My eyes were tired from poring over data, and my face was haggard. "When are you coming back?" I messaged the person who claimed to be on a business trip. It took hours to get a reply. "Not sure. Things are really busy lately." There was no point in lying. I thought Emma could have just been honest and told me she had reconnected with Jake, that their love had reignited. We could have had a calm discussion and gotten a divorce. My vision blurred for a moment, but quickly cleared. I didn't have the right to hold on. Leaving the lab, I didn't want to go back to an empty house, so I wandered the streets aimlessly. Suddenly, someone tapped my shoulder. "Alex, long time no see." Under the streetlight stood a woman, her presence as gentle as moonlight. I blinked in surprise before recognizing her, Lily. In high school, Lily had been one of the campus stars. Unlike the others, she came from a humble background and was a scholarship student. But she was beautiful, kind-hearted, and highly capable, just as popular as the wealthy students. In Emma's eyes, Lily was the girl I had a crush on. Chapter 3. Sitting at the restaurant, I suddenly remembered all the matchmaking schemes Emma had orchestrated under the pretense of helping me, and I felt a sense of unease. "It's been a while. When did you get back?" I smiled and asked Lily. We had been close in the past, but after she joined Doctors Without Borders, our contact gradually faded away. Now, after years of working abroad, Lily seemed more composed and steady, yet her warmth remained. "Just taking a short break," she replied gently. "Came home to rest." We quickly fell into an easy conversation, catching up on the years that had passed. I listened intently as she told me stories about disaster zones and rescue missions around the world, becoming more and more engrossed. "Alex," Lily said, looking at me seriously, "have you ever thought about joining us?" I froze. One of the reasons we had become close was our similar backgrounds. Her parents, both Doctors Without Borders, had died in conflict zones. Coincidentally, my mother had been their classmate in medical school. I had once had ideals and beliefs, but I also had my attachments and selfish desires. So, even when Lily mentioned it years ago, I never dared to act on it. But now, the image of Emma and Jake in my mind resurfaced. Maybe soon, there would be nothing tying me down. A few days later, Lily sent me brochures and application materials. I was sitting in my study, reading them quietly, when the door opened. I calmly switched the screen. It was Emma. She wore her usual relaxed smile, but something seemed off. "What are you up to?" she asked, walking closer. I could smell the alcohol on her breath. I wasn't ready to tell Emma about this, so I casually said, "Reading reports." "Have you been drinking?" My tone wasn't friendly, but Emma just laughed softly and draped herself over me like a cat. Her warm hands started to caress my shoulders and neck. I shivered instinctively and tried to push her away gently. "I want," she slurred. Her eyes glazed over as she looked at me seductively. "Who do you want? Me or Jake?" Logic told me to stop, but under her gaze, my resistance melted away. I could never resist Emma. After years of marriage, our bodies knew each other too well. Sweat dripped down my forehead, and in a haze, I heard Emma say something. "The photo. Want to see it?" I frowned, my voice hoarse. "What photo?" I looked into her eyes and suddenly sobered up. In the middle of this, her gaze was calm and deep. Without a word, she picked up her phone, tapped a few times, and showed me the screen. The air seemed to turn cold. I stared at the photo, a candid shot of me and Lily. I blinked slowly. "When did you find out about us? Why didn't you tell me?" Emma's chest tightened. In the photo, I was smiling warmly at Lily, an expression she had never seen directed at her. They looked so close. Had this been going on all along? I looked from the screen to her face. Emma still had a smile on her face, but I could see the displeasure hidden behind it. For a moment, I thought she might be jealous, but then I laughed inwardly. It was just her pride that was hurt. She had been caught off guard. I lay back, feeling exhausted and powerless. Emma's voice took on a confrontational tone. "Aren't you going to say anything about Jake?" I cut her off. "I have photos of you and Jake. You two are back together. Congratulations." Chapter 4. Panic and guilt flashed across Emma's face. I grabbed some clothes and got up to go to the bathroom, but she suddenly grabbed my hand. "Are you angry?" she asked. I paused, turned to look at her, and gave a faint smile. "Angry? Why would I be?" I said. "If you want a divorce, just tell me. I don't care about the money or anything else." My voice was calm, but inside, my chest was aching painfully. Emma didn't let go. She stared at me for a moment, then bit her lip and snapped. "You're really that eager to end it? You say it so casually, like you can't wait to get divorced and run to Lily." Her angry accusation caught me off guard. My eyes darkened, and I shook off her hand. "Emma," I said coldly, "have you forgotten what our marriage was? We didn't get married for love. We both knew the other had someone else in our hearts. So don't act like I'm the one betraying you. Lily and I just met by chance. Nothing happened. But you and Jake? You lied about a business trip and went to a hotel with him. So, who's the one betraying whom? I stopped, swallowing the rest of my words. Emma's face turned pale, and she pressed her lips together tightly, unable to respond. Just 10 minutes ago, we had been in each other's arms, and now there was no trace of warmth left. When I came out of the bathroom, Emma was gone. The house felt empty, and we were in the midst of a cold war. For the next 2 weeks, we barely spoke. Sometimes, we didn't even cross paths. During those long, silent nights alone, I slowly began filling out the application form. A few days later, after work, Emma showed up to quietly pick me up for a social gala. I'd been surviving on hardly any sleep, but I still forced a smile and linked my arm with hers. I didn't expect him to be there. Jake, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He approached us with practiced ease and familiarity. Alex, he smiled, his eyes crinkling. Long time no see. My entire body tensed, but under so many watching eyes, I had no choice but to return the pleasantries with a smile. What was the point of this? In a quieter corner, my expression was flat, but my voice carried the undercurrent of frustration. If Jake was going to be here, why did you still drag me along? Emma was uncharacteristically silent today. Her dark eyes stared at me without blinking, impossible to read. Why not? She replied calmly. I thought you two got along pretty well. I had no response. I had a gut feeling something was off with Emma, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly why, and I had no way to refute what she said. After a long silence, I turned away and left her with just one word, whatever. I just don't want people getting the wrong idea and gossiping. I sat for a while in the lounge, splashed some water on my face, and walked out. After calming myself down, my leather shoes made no sound as they sank into the carpet. At the end of the corridor, 2 figures were entangled. As I got closer, the low rustle of intimate whispers reached my ears, impossible to ignore. My brain stalled for a moment. Without thinking, I just walked straight toward them. The sight of Emma and Jake kissing passionately hit me head-on. It was the first time I had seen them being this intimate with my own eyes. Emma had her back to me, wrapped in his arms, her head tilting back again and again as she kissed him, only to be forcefully held in place by his hand at the back of her neck. In that position, I knew it all too well. It was Emma's favorite way to be kissed. I had kissed her like that countless times. Suddenly, her tightly shut, trembling eyelids flew open, and Jake locked eyes with me. Without missing a beat, my breath hitched. I could clearly see the satisfaction and smugness in his pupils. When Emma weakly began to push at Jake's shoulders to pause the kiss, I jerked backward, leaning against the wall. My mind went blank, my breathing shook, and my heart pounded fast and sharp with pain. What are you doing hiding here, Alex? I flinched violently, eyes widening in shock as Jake appeared before me. His expression was as calm as ever, his cheeks still flushed, lips slightly swollen and glistening. I opened my mouth but couldn't make a sound. Jake, on the other hand, casually patted me on the back, speaking as if we were close. You stood there watching for quite a while. Got something to say? That provocative look he'd given me earlier still flashed in my mind. I don't understand why you two got back together, I said slowly, my throat dry. And that's nice. Jake's handsome face leaned in close, his dark, shiny eyes staring directly into mine. He didn't speak for a long moment. Alex, he finally said, his voice soft as a drifting feather. All these years, and you're still the same hypocrite. Do you even realize what I hate the most? It's that holier-than-thou act, like nothing ever gets to you. His voice trailed off to almost nothing. Then, all of a sudden, Jake grabbed my hand and slammed it into his own face. A red handprint bloomed across his cheek, and blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Alex, Jake shouted hoarsely, his eyes blazing. Why the hell would you do this? I trusted you. Back then, and because of you, Emma and I spent years apart because of some stupid misunderstanding. And now I'm back. Can't you at least let us be together properly? My arm, used without consent, still hung in the air. Then it hit me. I turned my head and saw Emma stepping slowly out from the side, handbag in hand. Chapter 5. What are you saying? I stared at Jake, my brows drawn tightly together. Jake clutched my arm, looking aggrieved and on the verge of tears. You're still trying to deny it? When I went abroad years ago, I gave you the first watch Emma ever gifted me and asked you to tell her that if she truly loved me, she'd wait. But what did you do? Jake accused, his voice rising. You never told her, did you? And you threw the watch away. Then you used the fact that Grandpa Thompson liked you to get him to write up that engagement clause in his will. I stared at him in disbelief, twisting the truth, making things up out of thin air, and somehow making it sound convincing. A watch? A message? I was so furious my hands trembled, clenching my fists tightly. I snapped back. Do you have any proof? Why would I even do something like that? Why? Jake, still with tears on his face, suddenly smiled. Alex, because you're in love with Emma. You were obsessed with her, weren't you? So crazy about her you'd do anything to get her. Like a thunderclap on a clear day, a roar filled my ears, and I froze. A love I had hidden for over a decade, exposed like this in a moment so ugly and humiliating. My eyes drifted slowly toward Emma, who had remained silent all this time. My breath caught. Her eyes were filled with sorrow and disappointment, piercing through me like sharp glass. She believed him, and I realized with crushing clarity it wasn't just now. Jake had probably been feeding her this version of the truth again and again over the past few days, complete with fabricated evidence. That's why she'd been acting so off lately, like she had something she wanted to say. I couldn't help it. A bitter laugh escaped my throat. So this was the reason she had me come here today, to see Jake. The more absurd it became, the more I laughed. My lips curled with bitter irony. You wanted to see what dumb thing I'd do next to try and ruin your tragic little love story, didn't you? Jake was still breathing hard, overcome with emotion. After a long pause, Emma finally spoke. So it's true. You really, all this time, you were in love with me. Jake went still. For a fleeting moment, an odd blankness crossed his face, but neither of us noticed. It was all too humiliating, too pathetic. I knew if I stayed a second longer, I wouldn't be able to hold back the tears. Who I love is none of your business anymore. My eyes were red, but my voice was calm and even. Emma, let's get a divorce. Without waiting for their reactions, I turned and walked away, my pace quick and firm. Only once I was in the back seat of the car did my body finally release the tension. My head hung low, a tear landed on my trousers, followed by a quiet stifled sob. Lily had finally received my application for Doctors Without Borders. Overjoyed, she invited me to a cafe to talk more about the details. My eyelids had been puffy for days, and even when we met, the swelling hadn't fully gone down. But I wore a neutral expression and even seemed oddly cheerful, discussing various plans with Lily in high spirits. Suddenly, a shrill ringtone interrupted our conversation. The caller ID read Sandra. I answered, and her overly calm voice came through the line. Alex, how are things going with you and Emma lately? Any fights? A half-drafted divorce agreement popped into my mind. I responded casually, why the sudden interest, Mom? Before she could come up with an excuse, Lily gasped softly from across the table. I looked up and saw her staring at her phone, stunned. After hesitating a moment, Lily flipped the screen toward me. A massive, glaring news headline crashed into my vision. Emma, CEO of Thompson Pharmaceuticals, spotted at a private hospital's OB/GYN wing, accompanied not by husband Alex, but celebrity Jake. Marital crisis confirmed. Chapter 6. The Thompson Residence. On the sofa sat Sandra and Martin, both with stormy expressions. Emma knelt in the center of the living room, her head bowed, but her back was perfectly straight. Mr. Wong is back. The housekeeper's voice finally broke the heavy silence. Emma flinched slightly and turned her head, meeting my indifferent eyes. I gave her only a brief, careless glance before looking away. But for some reason, that small gesture made her heart clench. It took her a couple of seconds to regain her composure. Sandra frowned and quickly pulled my hand into hers. Her voice was filled with guilt and concern. Alex, look at you. You've gotten so thin. I kept my eyes down and said nothing. But then, Emma suddenly let out a cold laugh. Can't tell if you're trying to act pitiful or if you're actually feeling guilty. She spoke quietly, soft enough that only I, standing close, could hear the full extent of her sarcasm. I gave no reaction, only clenched my jaw tighter. Sandra hadn't caught the words, but she had seen her daughter's contemptuous expression, and it was enough to make her face darken with anger. What are you muttering about now? She snapped. After making a mess with that punk from the Wilson family, do you still have any regard for us or for your own reputation? Martin quickly reached out to calm his wife and said grimly, Emma, your mother and I already had the press suppress the news, and you're going to end it with that Wilson boy now. I don't care what's in your belly. It could be a damn mutt. We're not acknowledging it. Emma's face turned pale with rage. Her parents' tone was dripping with disdain, and it infuriated her. I'm pregnant, and that's a fact you can't erase. Her voice trembled with restrained fury. We've already lost so many years. I wronged him once. I won't hurt him again. Her words were firm and absolute. She would protect Jake no matter the cost, even in his absence. What about Alex? Sandra shouted, her voice sharp. Though I had remained silent the entire time, I could feel Emma's gaze boring into my back. Slowly, I turned my head. Emma looked at me under lowered lashes, and for a moment, couldn't help but think I really had lost weight. Was it because I felt guilty now that the truth had come out? Or was it because I still resented her and Jake because I hadn't truly let go? She tried hard to read something from my blank expression, but my eyes were as still and lifeless as stagnant water, and that only made her feel more restless. So she stared into those eyes and said deliberately, one word at a time, I've made up my mind. From now on, I'll only be with the one I love. My lashes fluttered rapidly. A glimmer of pain, impossible to suppress, cracked through my pupils. Emma caught it, sharp and unmistakable, and in that flash, she felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, but also, unexpectedly, a tinge of discomfort. Utter nonsense. Sandra exploded. Dad, Mom, I finally spoke, my voice calm and level. I turned my head and paused for 2 seconds, then suddenly bent down on both knees. Gasps filled the room. Emma stared in shock at my thin, kneeling figure. Then she heard my voice, cold and detached. Emma and I have already discussed it. We're getting a divorce. The room fell into a stunned silence. Emma opened her mouth, but only managed a broken guh. Alex, what kind of stunt are you pulling now? Sandra was nearly in tears, panicked. Alex, I understand you're upset, but divorce? This is too far. We can still. Aunt Sandra, that word, aunt not mom, hit her like a slap. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and Emma, still looking at my back, suddenly felt an ache tightening in her chest, but she couldn't figure out why. Chapter 7. My face was pale, but I knelt with a straight back and spoke calmly. All these years, I've never forgotten how much I owe the Thompson family for raising me. I'm truly grateful. Even after Emma and I divorce, I'll still visit you often. There's no love between Emma and me. We're not right for each other. Now that Jake is back, just let them be together. I gave a small laugh. Didn't you always say, Aunt Sandra, how much you wanted to be a grandmother? Sandra's lips trembled, but she couldn't form a response. After a long moment, she muttered bitterly, what a sin. Martin's face was dark, but he kept his voice as even as possible. Whatever the case, Alex, get up first. I was halfway to standing when a hesitant voice echoed from the corridor. Sir, madam, there's a visitor. It's Mr. Wilson. I froze and turned to look. Jake stood there, teary-eyed and pitiful. Yet the moment our eyes met, I saw it, that flash of smug triumph, brief, sharp, and meant only for me. Even Emma seemed startled by his sudden arrival. Jake rushed over to shield her protectively. What are you doing here? She whispered. His gaze dropped instinctively to her belly, clearly full of worry. The pregnancy had been a surprise even to her. She had been unable to resist the temptation of the one who had once been her unreachable teenage dream. But she hadn't really figured out what to do about their relationship. She had taken precautions cautiously, so when she found out she was pregnant, though she'd put on a joyful front, she couldn't hide her inner panic. At the banquet when I had coldly proposed divorce, Emma had assumed it was nothing more than wounded pride and embarrassment after being exposed, not something I'd follow through with. She couldn't believe someone like me, who had once gone to such great lengths, who had hidden his feelings for her for so many years, could let go so easily. But today, hearing me state my decision in front of her parents, hearing me call Sandra aunt instead of mom, she finally began to realize maybe she never really understood this quiet, unreadable man she had known for so long. Behind her, Jake's hoarse voice broke in. Uncle, Auntie, Emma and I truly love each other. I really love her. He was naturally handsome, and now with his reddened eyes, he looked even more sincere and deeply emotional. Since Alex doesn't want to be with Emma anymore, please let us be together. For a brief second, Emma's face darkened. She stared at me expressionless, but I didn't even glance back at her. And so, this absurd farce finally met its end with compromise. I signed the divorce papers with Emma at an astonishingly fast pace and moved all my belongings out of the apartment. Emma, for some reason, grew oddly competitive seeing how businesslike and cold I acted. She said nothing. She didn't even flinch when, on the very last day I was packing, she openly brought Jake to move in. "I don't like that painting," Jake said, surveying the apartment and stroking his chin. "We'll need to change that. Oh, and this spot too. That's gotta go." Emma smiled sweetly, agreeing to everything. I looked at the happy couple and couldn't help but curve my lips into a faint smirk. This apartment's layout and decor that we had once designed it together, every detail. But now none of it meant anything anymore. I rolled my suitcase out the door alone, leaving behind their saccharine affection and grating laughter. Soon after, Emma and I were standing outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, each holding a freshly issued divorce certificate. Emma stared at the thin booklet in her hand, dazed. It was as if only now the reality sank in. We were truly over. From now on, not even friends. I, on the other hand, casually slipped mine into my bag, gave her a slight nod, and turned to leave without hesitation. Chapter 8. Wait. Before my brain even fully processed what was happening, Emma's voice called out to stop me. I turned around and paused, offering my ex-wife the last bit of my patience. She stood there stiffly for a long while, as if struggling to find her words. Finally, she blurted out, When did you start having feelings for me?" I was caught off guard for a moment. My brows drew together briefly, then relaxed as I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "What difference would that make to you now?" I replied flatly. "Would knowing add some spice to your love life going forward?" Emma's face froze. A flash of irritation crossed it. Was that necessary? If we're being honest, weren't you the one who wronged both me and Jake? I was silent for a long beat, then let out a soft chuckle, without offering a single word in return. I adjusted the strap on my watch and made no move to stay. "If I sent you an invitation to the wedding, would you come?" Emma suddenly shouted toward my back, her voice oddly loud and uncertain. But by the time I pulled away in my car, she had received no answer. 3 months later, Capitol Airport. Wearing simple clothes and no makeup, I pushed my luggage through the crowd, scanning my surroundings. "Over here, Alex." A soft-spoken woman waved at me. I instantly smiled and walked toward her. Lily patted my shoulder with a teasing grin. "Nervous? You ready for this?" Through my shirt, I reached to touch the pendant around my neck, a keepsake from my late mother. "Yeah," I nodded, grinning broadly. "I'm ready. Ready to walk forward alone, for no one but myself." At the hotel wedding venue, Jake sat alone in the dressing room, dressed in a finely tailored suit. He admired himself in the mirror, clearly satisfied with how he looked. Thinking about how smoothly everything had gone, a pleased smile crept onto his face. Suddenly, there was a soft noise at the door. His movements halted, and through the reflection, he spotted a woman casually strolling in. Jake whipped around, clearly irritated. "What are you doing here?" The woman, cradling her belly, walked up to him nonchalantly, a sly smile on her face. "What? It's your big day. How could I not come?" She leaned in and wrapped her arms around him. "Babe, you look so handsome today." Jake's cold expression faltered. After a few playful shakes from her, he gave in and let out a reluctant but smug smile. "You're way too clingy, Lisa. Don't mess up my hair." Lisa let out a dramatic sigh. "So handsome, and yet you're marrying another woman. My poor heart." Jake gave her a side glance, half amused, half annoyed. "You know damn well I'm doing this for you. If it weren't for you." He mumbled, but didn't finish the sentence. Lisa quickly forced a smile, pulling his hand to her belly. Yes, our hero," she cooed. "Making such a huge sacrifice for our future as a family of 3. Jake looked down, his eyes soft with affection. He kissed her on the cheek. "Just wait for me, Lisa." Meanwhile, in the main wedding hall, dressed in her wedding gown, Emma stood quietly off to the side. Her gaze drifted across the decor. She seemed distracted, but her eyes kept flicking back to the entrance again and again, as if she were waiting for someone. Well, what's the bride doing hiding out here all alone?" A playful voice broke through the silence. It was Sophia, Emma's longtime best friend. She wrapped an arm around Emma's shoulder, following her gaze toward the doors. "Let me guess," Sophia said with an annoyingly teasing smile. Don't tell me you're waiting for someone. Could it be our dear Alex? Emma's expression didn't change. She shot Sophia a sideways glance, but didn't respond. Sophia had been a heartbreaker since they were kids, falling for one guy after another. Her relationships never lasted more than 3 months. Back in high school, she'd even had a fleeting crush on me. One time, they were all hanging out together, and Sophia had a little too much to drink. Her mouth got ahead of her brain. Just look at Alex, all clean, cut and proper in that boring school uniform. Honestly, I've never played with that type before. Just wait, you guys watch me. Her words were cut short as she crashed onto the table, knocking over a bunch of bottles, groaning. Before she could say more, Emma, young and delicate as she looked, stood there with an ice-cold expression. The slap she'd just delivered had left her fingers flushed and trembling with restrained fury. Her breathing was sharp and uneven. Let me make this clear, Sophia, she said, her voice cutting. Don't touch Alex. With that, she turned and stormed off, ignoring any idea of friendship. Still sitting on the floor, Sophia rubbed her face with a wince. I was just joking. I didn't do anything, she shouted after her. What is it with you? Isn't loving Jake enough? You want Alex too, Princess Thompson? Now, years later, the memory suddenly replayed itself in Sophia's mind. She clicked her tongue. Back then, Emma had been so head over heels for Jake. Everyone thought they'd end up together for sure. But just like that, she turned around and married me instead. And while close friends knew Mr. Thompson Sr. had probably arranged some of it, over time, the couple had seemed genuinely affectionate. Even outsiders began to believe they had fallen in love for real. Who could have seen this coming? Jake returned, and suddenly everything flipped. Men, you really went all in, Sophia sighed. Divorced fast, remarried even faster, got back together with your teenage dream, and now a baby on the way. You're moving at 800x speed. Emma didn't respond for a long time. Then she said quietly, my love life isn't yours to comment on, Miss Kim. All right, Sophia wasn't offended. She just shrugged. As long as you don't regret it, and Alex's heart's not broken, then hey, happy ending for everyone. Nothing for me to complain about. No regrets, no heartbreak. Suddenly, Emma's mind flashed back to my indifferent eyes, that distant silhouette as I walked away. She couldn't help herself. She pulled out her phone and opened a chat window. Where are you? Are you really not coming? But all the way until the last guest left, and the wedding was over, not a single word came back. Chapter 9. Alex, over here. I was standing in the modest hospital cafeteria, tray in hand, scanning the room when I spotted Lily waving at me. Smiling, I made my way over, only to notice someone unfamiliar sitting beside her. Allow me to introduce you, Lily said, gesturing with her open palm. This is Dr. White. Alex just joined us recently and already showing outstanding skill. And this, she added, patting the woman next to her on the shoulder, is an old friend of ours, a war correspondent, Olivia. Olivia smiled warmly. Nice to meet you, Dr. White. I nodded politely in return, not thinking too much of it. But instinctively, my eyes swept over her. In a place ravaged by conflict, even the most refined souls inevitably take on a rough edge. I myself hadn't washed my hair in days and had just resigned to wearing a cap. I'd come straight from multiple surgeries, my eyes puffy, my face worn out. But Olivia carried an oddly serene presence. Her clothes were tidy and crisp, her movements unhurried and composed. Probably some rich young lady here to experience life, I thought absent-mindedly as I shoved a mouthful of food into my mouth. Then again, even if the Emperor himself showed up, it wouldn't matter to me. Dr. White. A nurse rushed into the cafeteria, heading straight for me. That patient they just brought in, something seems off. You'd better take a look. I immediately swallowed a few more bites and replied, got it. I'll head out first, I said quickly, nodding as I grabbed my tray and made a fast exit. The two women watched me leave, my figure all business and purpose. Lily turned her gaze back, grinning mischievously. Wow, looks like he has zero recollection of you. Olivia didn't look away until I had fully disappeared. Her tone was calm, unaffected. That's normal. We never really interacted directly anyway. Lily smirked. Never interacted? Sure. But that didn't stop you from pining for him all these years. You came back from overseas, heard he joined up, and suddenly made such an effort to tidy yourself up just to make a good impression. Olivia had no response. She just took a sip of water in silence. Today might have been the first time I met her, but for Olivia, her impression of me had been sealed 4 years ago. Back then, she wasn't yet a war correspondent, just a restless spirit roaming the world with her camera, capturing everything that spoke to her. She had made a rare trip back home only to be dragged by her mother to attend a formal banquet. Olivia rarely wore gowns and felt awkward, constantly adjusting the tight fabric around her waist as she leaned idly to the side. Then suddenly, her gaze froze. Not far away stood a man, handsome, quiet, with a natural, unassuming elegance. His eyelids drooped with fatigue. He looked hungry but clearly had no appetite. He was nibbling listlessly at a piece of cake. Strangely, the restless irritation that had been building up inside Olivia completely melted away in that moment. It was like a spring breeze had brushed gently past her chest, soothing her agitation. Her fingers twitched, itching to lift a camera to capture that fleeting image. But of course, she hadn't brought one. Instead, she simply lifted her hands and formed a frame with her fingers. She didn't really mix with people in my circle, so she searched her memory for who I might be, but nothing came to mind. Just as she had organized her thoughts and was about to approach me, my otherwise mild features suddenly came to life. Though my expression remained mostly neutral, Olivia could swear my eyes lit up. A woman walked over, and I straightened up, allowing her to link arms with me. It was then that Olivia noticed the diamond ring on my right hand. The woman complained, "I'm so tired." I replied gently, "You've had a long day. It's okay. We're heading home soon." Their intimate, effortless exchange floated to Olivia's ears from a short distance away. "Ah, married." Olivia, who had just straightened her posture, leaned back again. Her eyes followed the couple's retreating figures. She couldn't quite name the feeling welling up inside her. Later, she casually asked her mother about me and found out who I was. Alex thought that was my name. I used to be the adopted son of the Thompson family and had already been married for a year to a Thompson family daughter named Emma. Look at them. What a perfect match. Talented and beautiful and so in love, her mother said, seizing the chance to scold her again. Meanwhile, you're out all the time, no stability at all. If only you'd bring home a boyfriend one of these days. I honestly don't even know what kind of men a young lady like you would go for. What kind of men, huh? Olivia let her mother's nagging drift in one ear and out the other. Her thoughts wandered. She thought once again of that moment when I had framed the view with my hands like a photo. Chapter 10. Emma, this is the new housekeeper I just hired. When Emma returned home, Jake greeted her with a smile, leading a young woman over to introduce her. Not long ago, the former housekeeper, Annie Zhang, had to resign suddenly due to a family emergency. During this time, Willow had been eating at the office or outside and didn't feel particularly inconvenienced, so she hadn't rushed to find a replacement. She gave the new housekeeper a casual glance. The young woman was dressed formally, with just the right expression of humility on her face. Yet somehow, Willow felt something odd about her overall presence. "Hello, Chairwoman Liu. I'm Maria." The instant their eyes met, Maria's gaze seemed to flash with a hint of provocation and disdain, but it was gone in a blink. When Willow looked again with a frown, there was no trace of it. "Maybe it's just fatigue making my nerves fray," she told herself silently. She rubbed her temples and turned slightly, preparing to go upstairs. "If you think she'll do, keep her." Willow climbed the stairs absent-mindedly. Naturally, she didn't notice behind her that the so-called new housekeeper's hand was brushing along her husband's arm. Makoto glanced back with a smirk, silently brushing Maria's hand away. "Behave yourself." Willow had been heading straight for the bathroom to shower, but for some reason, she stopped in her tracks when she passed by the study. There were originally 2 studies in the house, since both people used to have busy work lives. But now Makoto had no need for a study, and this room had been left unused. Willow stood at the doorway for quite a while, her hand hovering uncertainly over the doorknob. She lowered her eyes and slowly opened the door. The housekeeper cleaned regularly, so the room wasn't covered in dust like an abandoned space. Standing by the door, Willow looked at the empty room and for some reason felt a hollow sensation in her chest. She walked inside and suddenly remembered that night a few months ago. She had received a photo of George meeting with Alicia, and her mood had instantly soured. When she got home, she had impulsively slept with George and questioned him about that meeting. Why had she done that? Was it her possessiveness acting up? Willow sat down in the chair, leaning back, and scenes of George working diligently at the desk began to surface in her mind. He had always been that way, whether as a student or later in the research lab. He had always been meticulous and focused. Willow had once thought he was dull and boring, but sitting here now, she found herself overwhelmed by something that felt a lot like longing. She was still dazed when Makoto's bright voice called from downstairs. "Honey, come down for dinner." Willow snapped out of it, suddenly feeling a pang of guilt. She shook her head, brushing away those untimely thoughts and emotions. Don't think about it anymore. What she needed to do now was to cherish Makoto properly. Chapter 11. Thud. Standing in the suddenly pitch black bathroom, my hair still full of foam, I froze in place. What the hell? Power and water outage. I quickly wiped the water off my body and threw on a loose shirt and shorts. I walked around the room, but couldn't find anything to rinse the shampoo from my hair. Helpless, I pushed open the door, planning to go out and see what was going on. My shoulder jerked back suddenly. I had just bumped straight into someone holding a lantern. "Who's there?" The woman looked startled too by the door opening so suddenly. After a pause, she replied, "It's me." She explained there was an issue with the main switch. "I wasn't sure if you were affected too, so I came to check. My room's pretty close to yours." She tilted her head and pointed just over there. I followed her gesture, nodding in understanding. "Ah, okay. Thanks." For some reason, Anna suddenly lowered her gaze and fell silent. As I looked down slightly into her eyes, I found myself randomly thinking they were actually quite beautiful. Suddenly, something cold dripped down my shoulder, a clump of foam falling from my hair. "Ah," I said awkwardly, brushing at my head. "The water went out while I was washing my hair. So yeah, maybe I imagined it." But Anna's lips curled slightly, as if she were trying not to laugh. She said gently, "There's a lake out back. The water there's fairly clean. You can make do with that." Under the silent night sky, the only sound was the soft splashing of water. Anna stood on the grass with the lantern, her back to the lake. She lowered her eyes quietly, listening to the sounds behind her, feeling an inexplicable nervousness. "Why aren't you saying anything?" I stood in the lake, looking at her slim silhouette. "Let's chat a bit." Anna paused for a moment, then asked thoughtfully, "Why did you come here?" "Alicia told me you used to work in a lab. I've heard about some of your research. It's impressive," she added sincerely. Maybe it was the bright stars or the soft night breeze, but something in me relaxed. Her rare openness put me at ease. "I've actually always wanted to come. My mom, she used to talk about this dream all the time. When she mentioned her classmates and friends, it was always with admiration. But she gave it up for me and my dad. I gave it up too for a time. I buried that dream completely." Anna listened quietly, then suddenly blurted out, "Was it because of someone you loved?" The moment she said it, she regretted it and quickly tried to take it back. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's okay." I was slightly taken aback, but not angry. I even smiled. "You're not wrong. That's exactly why." "Did Alicia tell you?" "Yeah, I was married before. I only came here after the divorce." It had been a long time since I'd last thought of Willow. Now that her name had come up, I was surprised by the calm I felt inside. No heartbreak, no turmoil, just a faint, unavoidable sense of wistfulness. Anna's voice was soft. "Why did you two divorce?" "Because she didn't love me." Behind me, the sound of water stirred, and slow footsteps approached. I came out of the lake with a towel draped over my head, still dripping slightly. Anna froze instinctively, turning away. But then she seemed to realize something and quickly turned back. "Ah, sorry. I couldn't help laughing." For some reason, she seemed kind of adorably awkward. "It's not like I'm naked or anything. You don't have to be that cautious." Anna tugged awkwardly at her earlobe, her ears slightly red with heat. After a couple of seconds of silence, she brought the topic back up. "What you said earlier, what did you mean?" "Exactly what it sounded like. Our marriage was a bit complicated," I explained as I dried my hair. "Basically, it wasn't mutual love. She had someone else she cared about." Anna's gaze unconsciously dropped to a droplet of water on my neck. It clung there a moment before slowly tracing down my skin and disappearing into my collarbone. "But you did like her, didn't you? Was it painful?" I looked down as if thinking it over, then smiled. "Whether I liked her or not, I guess it doesn't matter all that much either way. It passes eventually." I draped the towel around my neck and tilted my head back, eyes reflecting the sky. "Wow, there are so many stars tonight. They're beautiful." Anna only glanced up briefly before her eyes returned to me. She looked at my tilted profile and softly responded with a quiet Suddenly, I felt something settle on my shoulders. I turned my head and blinked in surprise, my hands automatically catching the towel now draped over me. Anna's delicate face was close, her ears clearly flushed red. It gets cold at night, she explained. And you're still dripping wet. Use this first. Oh, okay. I suddenly felt a bit dumb, stumbling over my words. I hadn't been self-conscious earlier, being shirtless and all, but now unexpectedly, I felt a little embarrassed. There was a faint scent lingering on the towel. We walked back to the house in comfortable silence. At the door, we stood still for a moment, looking at each other across the small space between us. Good night, we spoke in unison. Chapter 12. Top floor of the Lou Corporation. Willow was working at her desk when a sudden sharp pain stabbed through her lower abdomen. Just then, Sandra walked in and let out a terrified scream. Willow, Willow, are you okay? Willow collapsed to the floor, clutching her stomach, struggling to speak through the pain. She gasped, Makoto, call Makoto. By the time Makoto rushed to the hospital at full speed, Willow was already in the operating room. He was panting as he asked, Mom, how is she? Sandra's face was full of worry. I don't know. She's been in there for a long time and hasn't come out yet. You have no idea. If I hadn't gone to the office today, who knows what would have happened to her? Her eyes were red and brimming with tears, clearly still shaken. The moment I opened the door, Willow was already lying on the carpet, and there was blood everywhere. At her words, Makoto's brow twitched, anxiety flashing across his face as he stared at the glowing red light above the operating room door. Suddenly, Sandra seemed to think of something and turned to him sharply, her voice rising in anger. And you? Where the hell were you? It's so late. Why did it take you this long to get here? Guilt flickered briefly across Makoto's face, but he quickly tried to explain. I was busy, Mom, really. If I'd known something like this would happen, I would have never left Willow alone, not for a second. No one knew how long they waited outside the operating room. At last, the red light went off. The doctor emerged drenched in sweat, pulling down his mask. Congratulations. Mother and daughter are both safe. In that instant, everyone let out a breath of relief. Sandra clutched her chest and leaned weakly against Martin, murmuring over and over, Thank goodness, thank goodness. Makoto's heart was racing uncontrollably. In the hospital room, Willow lay on the bed, pale and fragile, as if she could be blown away by the faintest breeze. Makoto sat by her side, gently brushing her delicate face with his fingertips. Suddenly, her long lashes trembled. Slowly, she opened her eyes. You're awake. Makoto stood up at once, his voice gentle and low. The anesthesia must have worn off, and waves of pain came rushing back in. Willow frowned slightly, unable to hold back her reaction. Her blurred vision seemed to take a moment to recognize the man in front of her. Honey, I'm here. I'm right here, Makoto responded instantly, pain and concern written all over his face. I told you I'd always stay by your side. It's a girl. She looks like you, absolutely adorable. At the mention of their child, a faint smile touched the corners of Makoto's eyes. But suddenly, as if something came to mind, that smile twisted ever so slightly. He placed a tender kiss on Willow's forehead and whispered, You've worked so hard, Willow. Willow's heart tightened as she slowly closed her eyes, a strange bitterness rising in her mouth. Chapter 13. Several days later, still at the hospital in another room, a woman gently rocked the crib with a faint smile on her face. Suddenly, the door opened and someone walked in. The woman looked up and instantly froze. Her expression cooled and she straightened her posture, a subtle air of distance forming between them. What are you doing here? Makoto walked in with a smile, standing by the crib and peeking inside. Ah, this little baby is so adorable. As he reached out to touch the infant, his hand was sharply slapped away. Maria snapped coldly, Don't touch her. Makoto paused, stunned for a few seconds, then clicked his tongue in annoyance. He walked around and sat by the crib. What's the problem? She's my daughter. I can't even touch her? Arms crossed, Maria scoffed, her face expressionless. Your daughter? Funny how she only becomes your daughter now. Where were you when we were fighting? Where were you when I called after falling down the stairs? Ah, did you remember she was your daughter then? And all these days, not even once did you show up. You've been too busy playing house with that woman and that kid. They're the real family to you. Her voice grew more emotional with every sentence, her eyes starting to redden. A flicker of impatience and irritation crossed Makoto's face as he turned away. But when he looked back, it was once again plastered with a conciliatory smile. Okay, I was wrong. Totally my fault, baby, he said, slapping his own cheek in mock punishment. I made you upset. I'm sorry. The Liu family's been hanging around non. Stop. I didn't have a single chance to sneak in. Willow went through hell delivering that baby. He leaned in and peppered Maria's face with kisses. Maria's expression softened slightly, her lips twitching in restrained emotion. Fine. Looking into Makoto's tender, flirtatious eyes, she actually felt a bit guilty. It must be hard for you, having to keep sweet. Talking that family. You've worked so hard, hubby. It seemed she had already forgotten that the reason for her premature labor was a furious argument with Makoto over the phone that ended with her falling down the stairs. Makoto caressed her face gently, his voice full of false sweetness. Don't worry. I've taken care of everything. I already swapped the babies. Our daughter will be raised like a princess. Chapter 14. Knock knock. Coming. I opened the door and froze for a second. Anna, what's up? She wore a soft cotton linen shirt, a gentle smile playing at her lips as her eyes curved in a warm arc. There's going to be a bonfire party tonight, she said. It's hosted by the locals. It's your first time here during one. Want to go? Lately, things had been relatively peaceful. Fewer injuries, fewer emergencies. It was the most relaxed time since I'd arrived. Everyone's spirits had eased, if only temporarily. I blinked, a little hesitant. But I don't really know how to dance. That's okay, Anna replied softly. You can just enjoy the atmosphere. We locked eyes for a moment, and in hers, I caught a flicker of anticipation, maybe even nervousness. My heart skipped a beat, my gaze wavered. Well, all right then. I pulled out a patterned shirt from the wardrobe. It was a gift from Mara at a local market, and I'd never worn it before. To be honest, it wasn't really my style. I'd always been reserved, low-key, not someone who suited this sort of thing. Staring at the shirt in my hands, I made up my mind. Nightfall. Bonfire. Music. Alicia leaned casually against a chip table, a beer in hand. She cast a sideways glance at the woman beside her and smirked. You look nervous. Anna stiffly denied it. Why would I be nervous? Is George coming? You invited him yourself, Alicia teased, looping an arm around her friend's neck. I swear the vibe between you two has changed recently. Don't tell me your wish is finally coming true. Is there something you're not telling me? Anna's mind instantly went to the night of the blackout. She pressed her lips together. Don't say weird things in front of Dr. Wong. Yeah, I know. Alicia took a sip of beer, then turned and her eyes lit up. She raised her hand. George. Anna instinctively straightened her back and turned around. I walked over quickly, still slightly out of breath, and gave a bright smile, teeth white in the firelight. Sorry I'm a little late. Anna's breath caught. Her eyes didn't blink as they landed on me. The vibrant, patterned shirt clashed starkly against my pale skin and usually quiet demeanor, creating a surprising contrast. There were scars on my arms from recent rescue missions, but rather than flaws, they added to my appeal. In the dim lighting, my ears glowed faintly red, my eyes sparkled even brighter than the starry sky. A gentle tap on Anna's back brought her back to her senses. She smiled. It's okay. You're not late. Her heart was pounding like a drum, but only she could hear it. This land was rich with warmth and optimism that night. Almost everyone was swept up in joy, forgetting all their pain and troubles. Someone shoved a drink into my hand, and I downed several cups with growing enthusiasm. The atmosphere was infectious. I entered a strange, exhilarated state. People joined hands and danced in a circle around the bonfire, singing joyfully. Anna was beside me, our palms tightly pressed together. Firelight flickered on her smiling face, and I wondered, maybe it was just the alcohol, but why was my heart racing like this? Laughter and singing echoed faintly in the distance. I wandered off toward the lake to get some air. Anna, who hadn't been drinking, followed behind me at a calm pace. Then suddenly, maybe I stepped on a rock and stumbled. Before I could regain my balance, I felt a pair of slender arms wrap around my waist, steadying me. I turned my head and found myself looking into Anna's worried eyes. For a moment, time seemed to stand still, and the only thing I could hear was the sound of our combined breaths and the gentle lapping of the lake water against the shore. Without thinking, driven by some primal urge, I bent down and kissed her. Chapter 15. Where did you go again? What could you possibly be so busy with lately? Makoto sat on the couch, staring coldly at the message he'd sent on his phone. He waited a long time for a reply, fingers slowly curling tighter until he barely suppressed the urge to smash the device. After a long, forced breath to calm himself, he lifted his eyes to shoot a cold glance upstairs, then asked the housekeeper to make tea and carried the tray up himself. Standing before the study door, he adjusted his expression into a loving smile. "Baby," he called. The moment the door opened, his sharp eyes caught Willow hurriedly covering a notebook with a stack of documents, a flicker of panic crossing her face as she stood to act casual. "You brought tea up yourself?" she asked, gently taking the tray from his hands. Makoto's face showed no suspicion, but his fingers hanging at his side twisted tightly. "What were you working on?" he pressed. Just some company stuff," Willow smiled. "There's been a lot going on at the group lately." "Lies that you're lying too," Makoto thought, his smile cold. Dark, twisted emotions had begun to take root in his heart, growing like wild vines and screaming silently. Willow patted his shoulder, joking as she nudged him to turn around. "Go to bed early. You don't need to wait up for me." Once the study door shut, Willow let out a quiet sigh. She sat back down, moved the papers, and revealed the diary underneath. George's diary. She had brought it back the previous week after a short visit to Lewis State. She didn't even know how it happened. One moment she was just visiting, and the next she found herself standing in front of George's old bedroom. Pushing the door open, she saw the room exactly as it had been during his university days, most things still neatly placed in their original spots, though there hadn't been much to begin with. That was when she'd stumbled upon one of his old high school notebooks. She'd taken it like a thief, her rational mind screaming that she shouldn't look. Even if George had done wrong, even if their ending had been ugly, this was still a violation of his privacy. She knew all that, but she couldn't stop herself. The longer she stayed out of contact with George, the more often he crept into her thoughts, the more she found herself wanting to understand what he was really thinking. It was ironic. After knowing him most of her life, she was only now realizing she might have never truly known his inner world. In the diary, George had written, "I don't even know when I started liking Willow, but I think she's like the sun. Willow likes Makoto. That kind of hurts, but I guess it's not surprising. I just hope they're happy. Willow thinks something's going on between Alicia and me, and I didn't deny it. Maybe I let her believe that on purpose, so she'd never guess the truth, that it's her I actually like." He had really liked her silently, for a very long time. That was the clearest, rarest impression Willow took from the diary. His feelings had been pure, quiet, and rational. That was how George had loved her. Could someone who loved her like that really have done the things Makoto accused him of? The question crept unbidden into her mind, yet she still couldn't bring herself to doubt Makoto's word, that not even a little. Where is he now? Is he doing okay? And somewhere far from her thoughts, the owner of that diary, completely unaware, was sinking into a brand new storm of troubles. Chapter 16. George. Dr. Wong. George. Alicia's voice snapped me back to reality. "What's going on?" "I was telling you that there's a new virus outbreak in the disaster zone." She frowned exasperatedly. "Where were you just now? You've been completely out of it." I pressed my lips together and gave an apologetic shake of the head, but my mind kept replaying the night of the bonfire. Even a week later, every time I thought about it, I wanted to collapse from embarrassment and scream into the void. How could I? How could I get drunk and force a kiss on Anna? Unfortunately, I hadn't blacked out. I remembered everything clearly the next morning, the memories flashing through my mind as I brushed my teeth. One split second, and I'd blushed from head to toe. Since then, I'd been actively avoiding Anna. I didn't have the courage to see how she'd reacted or what she might be thinking. Alicia glanced at me, mumbling to herself. "You and Anna have been acting really weird lately." We both stayed silent, continuing to eat with our thoughts miles away. Then chaos. A nurse came running over, panting, her face filled with panic. "Anna, the reporter. Something's happened to her. She might have been infected with the virus." By the time Alicia and I got there, Anna had already been locked inside an isolation chamber waiting for test results. The room had a transparent wall. You could clearly see Anna sitting on the bed, staring off into space, looking a little bored. Alicia rushed off to the lab to track the test, and I stood alone in front of the glass, mind blank. Anna, who had been looking around the room casually, suddenly turned her head, as if sensing something, and locked eyes with me. She froze for a second, then immediately got up and walked over. I had no idea what expression I was wearing, but Anna looked up at me through the glass, her gaze filled with calm and a trace of helpless reassurance. Her lips moved as she was saying something. My limbs were stiff, reaction slow. It took a moment of watching her mouth move to understand. I'm fine. Don't cry. Don't cry? Was I crying? I blinked in confusion. My vision blurred for a second, then cleared. No tears had fallen, but my eyes were red, so red they looked like they could bleed. Anna had been photographing in a high-risk zone and got caught up in a dispute, during which she was accidentally scratched by an infected person. She'd responded quickly and calmly, informing the doctors and cooperating fully as they rushed her to the hospital. Anna had always been carefree, used to uncertainty and danger. Life and death didn't weigh heavily on her. When she realized she might have contracted a deadly virus, she had a brief moment of panic, but it passed quickly. She'd chosen to come to a chaotic war zone. Risk was part of the deal. If she got infected, then so be it. At least her case might help modern medicine advance. But it wasn't until she saw my helpless face pressed against the glass that fear truly took root in her. If she really was positive, if she truly didn't make it out alive, that would this man be sad? After all, they had kissed. Anna thought half-jokingly, though it was only because he was drunk. But still, she really didn't want to see me cry. We stared at each other in silence, each unsure of what the other was thinking. Suddenly, I lifted my hand and gently pressed it against the glass, fingers slightly curled. Anna blinked in surprise, then slowly raised her own hand, placing it directly across from mine. It was as if we were holding hands through the barrier. My lips, pale from tension, parted. I leaned close to the glass and said one word at a time, loudly enough for her to vaguely make out the sound from inside. Anna, when the results come out, no matter what they are, I have something I want to tell you. She stood frozen, her heart suddenly racing. I didn't stay long. There were still other patients to tend to. I couldn't remain by her side, and the test results wouldn't be ready quickly. Still, in the early hours of the morning, I quietly returned to the isolation ward. To my surprise, she was still awake. We looked at each other in silence, a quiet understanding passing between us. Then I leaned back against the glass and slowly slid down into a crouch. Minute by minute, time trickled by until the first pale light crept across the horizon, and Alicia came running over, out of breath. When she saw me, she looked startled, then broke into a bright grin. The results are out. She's not infected. Completely healthy. The weight that had been crushing my chest finally dropped. I stood up in a daze, limbs tingling and weak. Alicia opened the isolation room door, and Anna stepped out as if nothing had happened. Calm, gentle, composed. We stood quietly for a few seconds, then suddenly I pulled her into a tight embrace, one hand pressing firmly against her back. Before Anna could even react, she heard my voice trembling yet steady right by her ear. I like you, Anna. Chapter 17. Love is the most fragile and elusive thing of all. When no one else was home, Makoto quietly entered Maria's nanny room. The moment he smelled an unfamiliar men's cologne on her discarded clothes, his mind went eerily blank. Willow said she loved him, yet had always unconsciously defended George. And now, she spent her days secretly clinging to George's diary. Maria said she loved him too, but even after all he'd done for her, even after she gave birth to his child, she was still sneaking around behind his back. They all disgusted him. Only tangible things. Money, power, fame, his daughter would never betray him. Makoto held the tiny baby tenderly in his arms, whispering, "Daddy will love you forever." He stood in a daze until he sensed something wrong. She was burning up. His expression turned grim. The baby had a fever. Willow was in the Lu Corporation's office when the call came. Her assets had faced issues, but Makoto's tense voice on the line made her brows knit tighter. She rushed to the hospital, Maria tagging along. In the car, Maria asked casually, "Did something happen?" Willow, focused on calming Jake via messages, said flatly, "Emma has a fever." Maria's eyes flickered, but Willow didn't notice. At the hospital, Emma had already been rushed into emergency. Makoto stood frozen, pale, gripping Willow's hand. When their eyes met Maria's behind them, He looked away quickly, hoarse with despair. If something happens to the baby, I can't live with it. Willow patted his shoulder, trying to stay composed, but the doctor's solemn face as he emerged from the emergency room made her heart sink. Mr. Liu, Ms. Liu, the doctor paused, reluctant. Your daughter appears to have a congenital blood disorder, which severely compromises her immune system. Makoto swayed, nearly collapsing. Willow forced herself to ask, what should we do? The doctor replied, she needs an immediate blood transfusion from a direct relative, preferably the biological mother. Willow nodded and started forward, but Makoto tugged her sleeve, gone deathly silent. Assuming he was worried, she comforted him, but his voice stopped her. Wait. The doctor asked for her blood type, and before she could answer, Makoto shouted, grabbing Maria's arm. She's your daughter. Willow's mind went blank. Sandra and Martin, arriving at the hospital, heard the outburst. The doctor gestured to Maria. She needs to come with me. Willow, trembling, seized Maria and dragged her to the doctor. Chapter 18. Saving people comes first. Anna leaned against the wall as I treated a wounded patient. Most of lunch hour had passed, but she showed no impatience, watching my hands with quiet contentment. When I finished, we walked together. In a quiet hallway, I took off my mask, flushing as Anna smiled inches from my face. You did great. Thank you, my boyfriend, she chuckled, ruffling my hair. After Willow, I never thought I'd love again, but holding Anna felt like calm after a storm. Alicia's voice broke the moment. I'm still here. We laughed, knowing our bond was late, but right. George and Anna, nearing 70, dated with quiet awkwardness and steadiness. Anna waited outside patient rooms like a schoolgirl. I recalled Willow, but felt only nostalgia. One night, walking under the stars, Anna gave me a red thread bracelet. My family gave it for protection. I want you to have it, don't forget me. I looked at her sincere face and thought, I want to be with her forever. But I couldn't know this moment would later haunt me like a nightmare. The red thread feeling like shackles. Chapter 19. At the cafe downstairs from the hospital, Willow and Makoto sat facing each other in a silence so heavy it seemed to hang in the air. Willow's gaze was fixed on the table, while Makoto stared out the window, neither speaking for what felt like an eternity. Emma had finally been transferred out of the ICU after several days, her condition stable at last, which meant they could finally address the tangled mess between them. Willow hadn't had a full night's sleep in days. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, red and weary, and her face was utterly drained of color. I've been going through my assets these past few days, she suddenly said, looking up at Makoto, her voice breaking the silence. His long eyelashes trembled, and his already pale face turned even whiter. There are a lot of strange gaps, missing funds, hidden transactions, she continued, blinking slowly, her voice thick with exhaustion. If I hadn't deliberately gone looking, I probably wouldn't have noticed. She paused for a beat. It was you, wasn't it? You gave it all to her. Maria. Just saying the name made Willow's breath catch painfully in her chest. Why did you do it? Why? That question had haunted her through countless sleepless nights, and it still made no sense. Makoto's lips pressed into a thin line, his profile cold and stubborn. He slowly turned to meet her eyes, his lips barely moving. Because I hate you, Willow. I really, deeply hate you. He suddenly laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You keep saying you love me, but did you ever really see me? Do you even know what kind of person I actually am? You just projected your own emotions onto someone who fit your fantasy. His breath quickened. George and you. Both of you disgust me. He clearly liked you, but he had to pretend he didn't, putting on this self-righteous act like he was starring in some tragic, unrequited love drama. Have you ever seen the way you act around George? Willow, you're a damn fool. After all these years, you still don't even know who you really love. Makoto remembered it clearly. One of his birthday parties in high school, everyone had gotten a little drunk. At the end of the night, Willow had taken George home. Makoto had stood behind them, watching as she carried the stumbling George, her voice a mix of annoyance and helplessness. You idiot, she'd muttered. Can't hold your liquor and still keep drinking. My mom's gonna yell at me for this. You talk too much, George had slurred, his head resting sleepily on her shoulder. The ones involved are always blind. It's the bystanders who see things clearly, Makoto said, his voice tight. And I was the bystander who got dragged into it. He'd stood there, expressionless, but his fists at his sides had been clenched so tightly his nails dug into his palms. Later, he'd met Maria, drawn to her dangerous, seductive energy, and fallen completely for her. But then Maria had gotten hooked on gambling, racking up a huge debt. Makoto's family had never cared much about him, and Maria had no way to pay it back. As he'd stood there, frustrated and desperate, he'd seen the news about Willow and George Dot, and that's when the plan was born. Willow sat there, listening to Makoto's voice that's sometimes resentful, sometimes laced with mockery, and felt a growing panic and confusion swelling inside her. "And my daughter?" she asked. "Relax, we're not that heartless," Makoto said coldly. "She's being taken care of." "So, what you said about George?" Willow's voice cracked, dry and hollow. Makoto smirked, pure contempt on his face. "Obviously a lie. I just made it up. That idiot really believed you and I were in love. He even gave us his blessing. Can you believe that? Absolutely revolting." Willow's breath caught. It felt like a hand was slowly squeezing her heart, tighter and tighter. A flood of memories surged through her mind. The flat, uneventful years of their marriage, the way George had looked when he was misunderstood, his journals, so many things, scene after scene, clear and cruel. Her eyes reddened, and the fists resting on her knees slowly clenched. It was only in that moment that she finally realized that she really missed George, and she truly, deeply regretted everything. Chapter 20. When Willow received Alicia's call, she was both confused and emotionally unsettled. After all, for 4 years she had believed Alicia was George's unattainable true love, the one he had always carried a torch for. She recalled things she had done in the past, and the feelings that had come with them, and only now, in hindsight, did she realize that maybe she'd been jealous back then, that she just hadn't known it. "Hello? What is it?" she said, her voice distracted. Alicia's reaction on the other end was strange. There was a long silence before a hoarse, dry voice finally spoke. "George and I are back, but he's not okay." Willow's heart pounded as she rushed to the address Alicia had sent. She ran down the hallway and flung open the door. Then her steps came to a sudden halt. She stood there, breathing heavily, her eyes fixed on the back of the man sitting in the room. Alicia and several other people, doctors, from the look of them, stood nearby, discussing something in low tones. Willow stepped forward slowly, but Alicia noticed her and raised a hand to stop her. Alicia looked utterly exhausted, carrying the weight of unspoken burdens, but she hadn't rested properly in a long time. Willow leaned sideways, trying to get a glimpse of George's face, but all she could see were the bandages wrapped around his arm and his head. Her anxiety spiked. "What happened? What's going on?" Alicia glanced at George, then pulled Willow to the side. In a calm, concise voice, she explained everything. During the time George had vanished without contact, he had gone to Africa to work with Doctors Without Borders. There, he'd met Alicia's friend Anna, a war correspondent, and they had fallen in love. But then Anna had been caught in an attack. She died, or rather, Willow suspected that Alicia had originally meant to say died, but had changed it at the last second, softening it to was caught in the conflict. Anna had stayed behind to cover George's retreat and had been caught in an explosion. In the war zone, there was nobody, no time, no conditions to search. People died every day, lives were lost like ants underfoot. George was deeply traumatized. Since regaining consciousness, he had barely spoken. It was as if his soul had been left behind in that chaos. "I figured your family's the closest thing he has left," Alicia said quietly, her eyes closing in fatigue. "That's why I called you. I thought maybe you could help him." The flood of information hit all at once, and Willow was speechless for a long time, dazed. She slowly walked over and crouched beside George, her heart clenching. The man in front of her was visibly thinner. His already lean face looked almost sunken. There was no light in his eyes, nothing but a gray, empty fog surrounding him. He seemed more like a ghost than a living person. Only the red string bracelet on his left wrist, something Willow had never seen before, stood out bright and vivid, the only color left on him. "George," Willow called his name gently, reaching out to pat him lightly. "It's me, Willow," she said slowly and carefully, as if afraid of scaring him. "Can you hear me? It's been a long time." She whispered to him for what felt like an eternity until finally, there was a flicker of response. His pupils moved slowly, and he turned his head downward to see her face. Willow sat up straighter, her voice trembling with hope. George, look at me. It's me, Willow. His lips moved, and his brows drew together slightly. Willow, yes, yes, I am, Willow said, her eyes burning, her heart aching so badly it was hard to breathe. Suddenly, his frail body began to tremble uncontrollably, and his voice broke into fragments. She died, Willow. Do you know she's dead? Anna. Her name was Anna. She died for me. She died protecting me. Tears spilled from his wide, hollow eyes, drenched in despair. He stopped speaking and instead buried his head in his hands, letting out a pained, guttural wail. Willow moved. Alicia and the other doctors rushed over, trying to calm him, to restrain him. Willow was pushed aside, landing on the floor. She stared at the scene in front of her, dazed. George's emotions spilled into the room like a tangible force, engulfing her, pulling her in. Her chest hurt as if stabbed by 1,000 needles, but she couldn't breathe. If she hadn't been so blind, if she hadn't believed Makoto so easily, would George have never gone to Africa? Would he have never met Anna? Would none of this have happened? Would he still be the same George she once knew? It was her fault. If time could rewind, if she had cherished George the way he deserved, would everything have turned out differently? Chapter 21. Go first. Don't worry about me. It'll be fine. George, just you go first. I jolted awake from the dream, lying in bed with my eyes wide open, drenched in sweat. My body was still trembling uncontrollably, my breathing rapid and uneven. I stayed in that state for a while before slowly pushing myself up, cradling my head with a shaky hand. I had dreamed of that day again. Anna's final words still echoed in my ears, haunting and inescapable. I closed my eyes, and my right hand instinctively reached for the red thread on my left wrist, the muscle memory, an anchor I clung to as I painstakingly pieced together my shattered emotions. I had done this countless times over the past few days. Who knows how long passed before I dragged my aching, weak body downstairs. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water and leaned against the island, sipping slowly. Suddenly, I heard the soft rustling of footsteps approaching. I turned my head and saw Willow standing there in silence. We locked eyes for a few seconds. I gave a faint smile. Why aren't you asleep yet? Willow's pupils were dark as ink, staring at me as if lost in thought. She dropped her gaze and said softly, I heard some noise downstairs. Came out to check. Willow walked over to me, picked up a glass, and poured herself some water too. The late night air was quiet, not a word spoken between us. You've been staying here these days, I mentioned casually. What about Makoto? Why isn't he with you? We were staying at the Liu family residence, she said. Sandra found out about what happened to me and was heartbroken. She's been trying everything to help me recover my strength, but I've been drowning in my own emotions for so long. I had no space to care about anything else. Only recently have I started feeling a bit better, and only then did I begin to notice that something felt off. Speaking of your kid, I said, my tone light, as if we were just ordinary siblings chatting. I still haven't met them yet. Are they cute? Willow was strangely silent for a long time. Then, out of nowhere, she said, very cute. But they're not my child. I froze, not quite understanding what she meant, as I set the glass down on the counter with a soft clink. Willow's eyes momentarily lost focus, and she slowly began to explain. I listened quietly as she told me what had happened during this time and the truth behind it all. A complicated mix of emotions stirred in me. Absurdity, resignation, or maybe just the dull indifference of someone uninvolved. Maria never really quit gambling, Willow said. After Makoto helped her patch up her previous debts, she went and lost a huge amount again. And she's been sleeping around with a bunch of people. Lots of folks have their eyes on her now. It's not going to end well. Chapter 21. Makoto's done with her. I gave a quiet in response. So what are you two planning to do? Divorce? We're getting the paperwork done in a few days. Willow's head remained lowered, her voice muted. As for the child, he's Makoto's, of course. But the kid's sick, and I'll do my best to pull strings, find resources to help treat him. That's all. I tilted my head back, draining the last sip of water. Nodding without emotion, I said, sounds good. I turned to leave. Well, I'll just. George. My wrist was suddenly grabbed by a forceful hand. I didn't react as Willow clung to my arm, her panic tangible. I'm sorry for how I treated you back then. I really am. I know I was stupid, slow to realize what mattered, but I've finally seen it now. I've changed, I swear. Can we? Can we maybe start over? Could you still love me again? Her palm pressed against my skin, feeling the protruding bones. It broke her heart that how thin and worn I was. She truly wanted to make up for lost years. I didn't shake her off, nor speak for a long time. We stood frozen until I finally said, Willow, I accept your apology. But let's not. Her expression collapsed as I gently slipped my hand from hers. My eyes were calm, yet glistening. There's no chance for us anymore. I really did love you, and I'm grateful you brought light into my life. But the past doesn't come back, and I no longer have the strength to love again. Chapter 22. Willow and Makoto's divorce was quiet and swift. When they walked out of the civil affairs office, they parted without a word. Halfway down the steps, Makoto turned, but no one waited. He saw only Willow's car disappearing, then smiled self-mockingly and turned away. A strange phone suddenly rang. Babe, sweetheart, help me. Maria's frantic voice poured through. They'll kill me if you abandon me. Think about Emma. She needs her mother. Makoto listened in silence, face blank. Maria, you brought this on yourself. My child doesn't need a mother like you. You're on your own. He hung up, blocked the number, snapped the SIM card, and tossed it. Wandering to a park, he unexpectedly ran into me. We sat on a bench, talking peacefully for the first time. What was she like? He asked, eyeing the red thread. I smiled softly. She made me feel safe, believe in courage. I loved her and I miss her. Do you blame me? Maybe you and Willow. I laughed faintly. Even without you, we might not have worked. Without you, I wouldn't have met her. I never regret that. Makoto's throat tightened. The words I'm sorry lingered, unspoken. I looked up at the trees. I never regret anything. She was the red thread on my wrist. Now she's part of me. Chapter 23. 2 years passed in a blink. I traveled the world, always wearing the red thread. It never faded, as if fused into my bloodstream. I sent postcards to Alicia and the Laos, but rarely returned. Alicia messaged, when are you coming back? Let's catch up. I typed, we'll see. Just then, a woman collapsed at a cafe entrance. I'm a doctor. I pushed through the crowd, stabilizing her until medics arrived. When I stood, legs shaking, I saw her. Anna. She smiled sadly. It's been a long time, George. I'm sorry. Anna had survived the explosion, her legs injured. Too ashamed to burden me, she faked her death, running a cafe and relearning to walk with a cane. I hugged her tightly, tears soaking her shirt. Don't say sorry. Never think of yourself as a burden. Don't leave me again. She laughed through tears, clinging to me. I love you, George. I love you too. After years apart, to find love waiting, that only love and courage give strength to embrace again. This time, never to let go.